I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and it's time to leave no dye behind. Although, the lack of rainbow order was bothering me, so now it is time to leave no dye behind. Right here in these tie-dye bottles, I have some Dharma acid dyes that are a combination of 3 primary colors: brilliant yellow, Caribbean blue, and deep magenta. So our secondary colors here are just mixes of that. And all of this dye is at less than a 1% stock solution. I took the 1% stocks that had 1 gram of dye in 100 milliliters of water and diluted them. So there's not a lot of dye here, but I thought we'd do something fun and layer all these colors on top of one another. Now, we don't have equal amounts of all these colors. We have the most of the orange, followed by pink and purple. So our color is likely gonna be purple. I think that the yellows and the yellow, green, and then the blue aren't gonna make as much of an impact, but we're gonna start the pink and we'll see what happens. I pre-soaked this skein of Knit Pick Stroll fingering weight yarn, 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon, in some water with 2 tablespoons of white vinegar for a little while. And I'm actually going to take this dye bath over to the stove where I have a hot dye bath that was just a little bit of water. And I'm actually going to add this pre-soak. And okay, the yarn is going in. The yarn doesn't really need to be all the way in yet. We'll add it in a moment. But the bath is no longer warm because we just added a bunch of room temperature water. What I am going to do now is bring over our pink dye. And this one, since, okay, the pot I would say is a little bit lukewarm. This one I'm going to rinse out in here. If the pot was hot, I would not be dunking my hands into it like that. But now I can set that bottle aside. And we can start with our very first layer. So even though I have all 6 of the colors of the rainbow mixed here, really we're layering 3 colors just at different proportions over and over. But I thought that it would be fun, and this is a fun way to leave no dye behind. I'm now slightly concerned that we're gonna end up with a super saturated color. This pink is gorgeous, but I'm gonna heat things up and we'll check back in when it looks like a lot of this color has absorbed or not. Okay, it has been 15 minutes. The pot isn't that warm yet, but I think a lot of the color has still absorbed. So we're gonna take a close look after I get my gloves back on, and we're gonna see what we're working with. Yeah, there's a little bit of color left, but most of the color is in the yarn. So I'm just going to quickly remove the yarn from the pot. And what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to just take the zip tie and move it down, not an even amount, but I'm going to be moving the zip tie in between different colors, so that way just a different portion of the yarn goes into the pot first. It does not need to be even or equal every time. And we're going to come in with our orange dye, which really is more of that pink plus a little bit of yellow. And we're gonna rinse out the bottle, not in the pot this time because it's a bit warm. And the yarn is warm, the dye bath isn't really stirred, but we are gonna go in, and I am sort of dipping, but just slowly to stir everything up. We're gonna add the yarn in, and I don't know how long I'm gonna wait. Maybe 5 to 10 minutes or so. We'll see what makes sense. And then we'll come and check in to continue to layer these colors. 5 minutes later, let's check in. I've been very good. I did not touch it while not filming. Sometimes I can't help it. All right, I'm seeing like a hint of some yellow in there. Not much though. This is pretty. It is sunsetty. Once again, I am slightly off camera, but I'm gonna move the zip tie with the help of the tongs, trying not to tangle the yarn, moving it about 1/4 of the way down. And we're gonna start with the yellow. Not very much yellow, although there is a fair amount of yellow in the orange. So I'm curious, and we'll have to pull up a triad color mixing I did of these 3 colors last year to see like where this falls and feels within the range of colors. But, all right, we'll go ahead and give it 5 minutes. Why not? Why not? And actually, if you're curious about a certain ChemKnits Hanukkah video that is very, very similar to this one, that was filmed a few months ago compared to this one. We still aren't that warm. I mean, it's getting warm, but like we're not at a boil or anything yet. There's still a little bit of yellow in there. Again, I'm not that worried. And once again, just with the help of the tongs, very carefully, moving the zip tie down a little bit just to mix things up. Now, with adding the green, this might be the first time things start to feel a little bit more wrong, but there really isn't a lot of green. So I don't know how much of a difference this will make, but bringing it in, I feel like at this stage when we bring in the blue, that's gonna feel more wrong because yeah, this green isn't making a huge difference so far. Maybe it's toning down the brightness a little bit, but I don't think there's enough of it to really shift it. Honestly, things feel a little bit more neutral almost. But anyway, we're gonna wait 5 minutes. I mean, I suppose we don't need to wait 5 minutes, but it doesn't hurt. Okay, time to reduce the heat. And I feel like the blue is gonna do more than what the green did, which the green, I mean, it would be cool to do this in some kind of way, but have mini skeins and like remove one each time. So that way we could compare what it looked like before to what it looked like now. You know? Does that make sense? Maybe future Rebecca will have to do fade sets like that. Although it's hard to know because sometimes the jump between 2 colors is almost nothing. And then other times the jump might be bigger. I was just rotating the yarn, which it would just be hard to move the camera for each one of those moves. But I'm gonna rinse this out, get us a little more blue. And I'm also not really stirring things, which could add to some variation, but let's see. Yeah, we're getting muddier. Now the last color that we have is purple, so that's gonna bring in more of the blue. So more of whatever is making this a little bit muddier, but also more of the pink. So I am really curious to see where we'll end up, but things are definitely feeling muddier now versus bright. And there's more purple than there was either blue or green, maybe even combined. So we'll see if 5 minutes is enough, but we'll be back in a little bit. All right, let's see. I don't know. Here we are. It is still very, like, I don't know what color you would call this. I see pinks and orange and sort of like a dirty brownish green color. But we've got purple coming on. So we'll see what this will do. So the blue in it will muddy things. The pink in it will do more of whatever the colors kind of were doing already. So we'll see, but there's a fair amount of pigment here this time. And I will add that the yarn doesn't quite feel like we've layered on as many colors as we have. I would say that it feels a lot more like so far it's just been 2 colors mostly, which if you think about it, it really kind of has. This is the most blue that we've added onto it yet, but before this stage, there was only a tiny bit of blue in both the blue and green steps. And otherwise it was mostly that yellow and pink. But anyway, I think what I'm gonna do is wait, we'll wait 15 15 minutes and then we'll add more acid if we think it needs it, but we'll wait 15 minutes. And while we wait, we can chat, because while, again, we've layered 6 different rainbow colors on, technically it's just 3 pigments, and we're just using varying levels of each of the pigments each time. And so I think that could be one reason why we didn't feel the whole rainbow in there when looking at it. You mostly just felt sort of like the pink and orange and a little bit of like green based on the depth of the different colors and how things layered. When compared to Hanukkah, when I layered these same 3 primary colors, we got this very like parrot ratio kind of thing going on. And there we got so much more dimension in the colors because of a few things. 1, the pots were really crowded. And 2, the ratios of the colors to one another was more controlled. It was more planned. And so therefore I knew where the average was heading, and today we don't. Today we'll get something that is some combination of these 3 primary colors. We just don't know quite where we're going yet. But anyway, would you like to see me layer a rainbow where I'm using equal amounts of colors? Which, to be fair, equal amounts, like the same number of grams of 6 different colors, doesn't mean that each of them will be equally weighted together, because some colors are a lot more pigmented than others. So not that you do 1 gram on a, but like 1 gram of red is gonna have a lot more of that red to contribute than 1 gram of yellow. And so when you're doing equal proportions of all those colors, it's not gonna be as if you mixed equal amounts of the red, yellow, and blue. And so you can get different things depending on how pigmented each color is and probably the pigment that's in there. But anyway, if this is something that you would like to see, I'd be happy to play with it. Because if I'm picking a green and a purple, the pigments in there aren't necessarily the same pigments that are in the primary colors. They probably have some kind of blend to them, but the blend in there is going to be different dyes. And so then we'll be layering on more things, even if there are colors that break. So anyway, just a bit to think about, but let's go look at the yarn again. All right, let's see. You know, this isn't so bad. There's like purple with some hints of orange. Like there's elements of it that are nice. I mean, I wasn't sure how I was gonna feel and I was considering over dyeing it, but I actually really like it. I like the purple with like the orange undertones. So yeah, we're not gonna dump a bunch of pink into here like I thought. That was my plan. I was coming over and be like, all right, let's add a bunch of pink. I'm actually gonna let it ride because there's something subtle and pretty about it. But I am gonna add a little bit more acid, and we are gonna let this finish heating for another 15 to 20 minutes or so. All right, I'm gonna turn off the heat. Let's check and see how we're doing. Maybe a hint of blue, not very much. There's a little bit of blue, but not very much. So I'm gonna go ahead and set this aside to let it cool. Ooh, I see some blue in there. And once the yarn is cool, then we can wash it. Let's wash this layered yarn. It would have been fine if we had gone over this with like a bunch of pink, but yeah, I just like that orange. I don't know, something about it is a little different than a lot of the other muted tonals that happen to already be in my shop. But anyway, I'm not expecting to see color bleeding. This color is not that saturated, but let's go ahead and add some soap, and we'll fill this basin back up with water. That's a few minutes later because got distracted rewatching an old video of me dyeing carnations with Lucas like 5 years ago. Because he said he was doing that in school with celery right now. So, anyway. Not the best ChemKnits video, but it was fun to go back and watch it. But anyway, I'm not seeing any color bleeding. So I am going to go ahead and finish rinsing out the soap. Then I'm going to put the yarn through my spin dryer and hang it up to dry. Before we talk about this layered colorway, I want to show how I care for yarn that is not tangled, but a little bit disordered out of the dye pot. You may have noticed some of the yarn bunching as I moved the zip tie around, which wasn't always shown, but it's sort of, you know, just kind of compressed with itself. And so this is what I do. Okay, you see that I still have the zip tie on the yarn. I do this so that way if there are any tangles or if it gets really disordered, then I can look at where the yarn is at the zip tie and see, oh, were any strands flipped the wrong way, and I can make sure everything is in the circle in the right way. You can also do this by looking around the yarn at one of the zip ties, but if things are a little bit like this, it can be harder to tell right away. So now we're gonna snap the yarn, where I'm just gonna pick it up, put my hands through, and start snapping. I'm gonna rotate it and snap again. And I'm gonna keep doing this. And you can see that that big disordered patch is getting more ordered. It's not perfect yet. And so sometimes you need to go around a few times, but you can see that the skein is looking neater and neater just from this snapping. And there, it is so much neater, so much nicer to photograph and look at now. And I'll actually remove this zip tie at this stage. And so this is just something that I don't often show in videos. It's something that usually I do off camera before I start filming conclusions, but I figured it was worth sharing since this one was a little bit messier than they sometimes are. But now let's look at this yarn. And at first faraway glance, it looks almost like a muddy purple. But then when you look at it closer, you can see some red, orange, and like golden yellow colors through here. In some circumstances, the yarn almost feels glazed because of the way the color is sort of uneven on some of the strands, and it is beautiful. I mean, through here, you can see how some of the coloration looks a little bit shallow. It looks like some of the colors didn't penetrate very far. And I don't think it's as much that we have glazing going on here, but I think it's more that we had multiple thin layers of different proportions of the colors. And so in some cases, part of a strand took up more color than others. And so that gave us this gorgeous, multi-dimensional tonal yarn. But the real thing about this yarn that is so great is that the overall depth and color here is pretty even. If I put a black and white filter over the camera, which to be fair, there's different ways that you can do this to adjust the intensity of say reds versus yellows and things like that, but this is just a default setting on my camera. The overall color looks pretty even. Sure, there's maybe a little tonal variation, maybe things are a little bit lighter in here, but the overall color is so even that this means that stitch patterns that are more complex would show up really nicely, even though we have multiple colors in here. And that's just something that I enjoy a lot. It's really fun when you can have something that has a lot of dimension, but it's ultimately still very subtle. And there's not a lot of contrast between the different colors and things that we have going on here. In Hanukkah night 1 of this year, I layered these same 3 primary colors, but I had a goal proportion in mind. I picked a color that I knew I would end up with if I mixed the colors at a particular ratio and then layered them, which created something a little bit more rainbow, but in some cases did feel reminiscent of that color I was going for. Today, I didn't know what the average would have been. I imagine if I just mixed all these colors together, that dominant sort of dullish pink color probably would have been the dominant color, but it also could have leaned a little bit more orange. It's hard to say for sure. But there's something fun about not knowing where you're gonna end up. And I'm really glad that I didn't just over dye this with a bunch of pink like I almost did. I think that the depth in here is really beautiful. So I'm glad that I let this be what it is. And there have been times when I've mixed all of the different colors in one brand together. I mixed 40 different jacquard acid dye colors together, and we created a wonderful custom color with a very complex recipe. But we could similarly layer maybe not 40 colors, but we could layer a bunch of colors together. And I wonder what we would end up with and how this would feel similar or different to playing with these primaries, which when they overlap give us those more dramatic rainbow shifts, because the colors themselves are pretty far apart from one another, so you really see the way they blend. But anyway, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and if you enjoyed this video, make sure you're subscribed, turn on notifications, and you can join to become a channel member. There are some fun perks like badges next to your name and fun custom ChemKnits emotes, and it's a great way to help support the content here. Of course, the biggest way you can support the channel is by engaging with videos, so subscribing, like I said, but giving likes and leaving comments is a great way to help everything here. And Hanukkah isn't over yet, I don't think. I think when this video comes out, there's still more ChemKnits Hanukkah special videos. So make sure you tune in every night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time for a new video or bonus video if we're nearing the end. And I hope you've been enjoying it because the whole thing is a lot of fun. Thank you so much for watching.